There are a lot of critics of the Detroit Pistons. In today's episode, we'll discuss, are they right to be doubtful of the Detroit Pistons? Today's episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The deal. Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Per usual, I am your host, Khahil, and later on the podcast, we will discuss. I ruffled some feathers in the last podcast when I discussed my playoff rotation. I did not have Ron Holland in my rotation, and a lot of fans were upset about it. So we have guests. We have a guest on the podcast, friend of the podcast. He's been on many times, Matt Griffin. We'll discuss it later on. I want to see where he stands with it. We'll discuss, are there any play-in teams that could give the Pistons some problems? But we're going to start with a lot of the critics surrounding the Detroit, or a lot of the criticism and the critics for the Detroit Pistons that doubt whether they can have a deep playoff run, whether they are one of the favorites to come out of the East, whether they are actually even a real contender. I've seen a few lists where the Pistons are literally at the very bottom of any contender list, which is pretty crazy to me. Before we answer the question, though, I get Matt's thoughts. I do want to let you guys know, watching on YouTube, Matt is coming to us from 1908. He's coming from
an audio platform. It's an audio platform. If you're so worried about the aesthetics of this thing, this is the wrong content for you. If you freaks would like to see what I look like, I do have an Instagram. My Twitter profile picture is me. I'm very rare in that way. But I'm here to talk about basketball, not have a great camera. That's not the game that I play.
We'll fund Matt to get a camera at some point.
I have a camera. I don't know where it is. I cannot, for the life of me, even think of where it might be. I looked around my room. I don't know where the camera could have gone. It really should have never left my computer. I feel like
it shouldn't.
But it's gone. It is what it is.
But all right, so we've obviously heard a lot of the criticisms for the Detroit Pistons over the last month or so, over the last few months, especially when Cade went down. Right around that time, there was a lot of concerns about, they might not win 2 to 3 games without Cade. And there's been a concern all year about their half-court offense. Do they have enough secondary scoring? Do they have someone else that can take the load off of Cade if he's not on the, having his best game, or even just on the floor? But then Cade missed some games. They played incredible without him. They've been incredible all year long. And they're the 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. So there's certainly a lot of people that believe that should be enough to garner some respect. But Matt, I ask you, do you think do you think critics have a reason or a leg to stand on when it comes to doubting the Detroit Pistons?
I mean, I think that there's a leg to stand on. I think, throughout my entire life as a basketball fan, it's always been talked about, how different the playoffs are from the regular season, right? Like game slows down, this matters more, this matters less. You can't rely on whatever transition, for example, quite as much as maybe you feel like you can in the regular season. So like, I get that. I mean, it's certainly fair. And I certainly have enough doubts to say, okay, I don't think that they are, they're far and away the best team in the Eastern Conference in the regular season. That is not how I see it going forward in the playoffs, right? I don't think that we are like clear favorites in the Eastern Conference or anything. And I do think that there are holes to poke. I mean, the shot creation question is a question, and we see teams kind of built like this. Like the teams where it's like, wow, it feels like they overachieved a little bit. I don't know. People aren't really saying that the Pistons are bad or not that good, but I do think a lot of people are like, okay, it's early and they've overachieved, and they are the hardest playing team, and their defense has carried them and their toughness has carried them. They suck to play against, but once you can game plan against their weaknesses, maybe some of those weaknesses will bear out in more losses. And I mean, I definitely buy that a little bit, and I think that there's some credibility to it, but to say that and then also look beyond all the problems that the Pistons pose for other teams is kind of where I get a little bit upset or get a little bit annoyed with the way that they're talked about. Like you had mentioned, particularly on Twitter this week, you've been getting after it. I appreciate you being in the mind. Someone's got to do it, but I think that there's credibility. I'm not going to look past the fact that, on the perimeter, there's really only one guy that you super trust handling the ball. Dennis Jenkins, right, is our second point guard right now. I mean, he kind of came out of nowhere. He rides up and down with that 3 ball. And, it's not like he shoots a ton of them, but he's just not very good inside the arc right now as a scorer. So he's going to be pretty volatile. So I get it. There's not a ton of sources of offense, but other teams have to find sources of offense against us. So don't forget that when you talk about this.
Yeah, I think that's where. So I've said this all year long, and I'm still I feel better about the Pistons now after how they played without Cade than I have at any point in the season. That is true. But my overall stance with how I feel like people should be discussing the Pistons has largely remained the same. I'm not saying that people should be calling the Pistons the favorites in the NBA or that they're on the same level as OKC or San Antonio, or if you want to have Boston ahead. Like, I understand all that because this is their second playoff run, but they are a very young team. They're very new to this. They did surprise a lot of people, and they do have some flaws. So I'm not on here being biased and blind to the idea that the Pistons should not be the number one, contender. I'm not saying that, but I do feel like it's went way too extreme to the point where they're almost dismissive completely of the Pistons. And I do take offense to the whole idea of they're just tryhards. They just happen to play harder than everyone else. That's all that really is to it. Because the Pistons, when Cade went down, it was, they won't be able to score. I believe they had I should check it again. I had it in front of me. I believe they had a top 12-ish offense without Cade while he was gone. And they won a ton of, I believe they were 9-2, 9-3 without Cade. So I think that it's gone too far to the point of being almost dismissive of the Pistons. Like, if you want to have things above them and you have them like 5th or 6th in the contender rankings, I'd be okay with that. But having like friend of the podcast, we've had him on before, and good dude. I'm not going after him at all. But Jason Timpf of the Volume, he put out his contender list, and he had the Pistons at the very bottom, and he had them behind Minnesota, Houston, Cleveland, New York. He had them behind all of them. And I think that's utterly disrespectful to have them behind Minnesota, who Anthony Edwards, we don't know what's going on there. It's some weird situation. Their best player, we don't know what's even going on with them. So to have them behind them, I think is pretty crazy. Also considering the fact that they're in the West, that also features OKC, San Antonio, and Denver. Then you have Houston, who, if the problems about the Pistons are their half-court shot creation and their shooting, Houston's worse in both regards, except they don't have as good of a defense. And then you mentioned some of the teams in the East they have. The Pistons have destroyed the Knicks all season long. And if the playoff concerns for the Pistons are they're new, how will they play in the playoffs? Man, I'm sorry, I know you're a fan of this player. James Harden is employed by the Cleveland Cavaliers, and we have to bet that he's going to eventually implode at some point in the playoffs. Like, that's just like I think having the Pistons not at the very top is completely fair, but having them at the very bottom, I think is basically a spit in the hand and a slap across the face of, we don't think you're actually very good. So that's my pushback. And then I'll let you respond, but I did want to get into some of the weaknesses that you talked about that the Pistons do have.
Sure. I do think, though, like, as you sat there and listed those teams, it did kind of dawn on me. Those teams just have more players that that connects to like a Jason Timpf or something, is like, this guy is really good, or even this guy is good, or I've seen this guy be good in the playoffs. You haven't, everybody on our team, sans, Tobias Harris and Duncan Robinson, has played 6 playoff games max, right? So you're right. Like, in all likelihood, Harden would implode. At some point, Harden will implode. And Jared Allen has looked kind of rough in the playoffs for stretches, and Mobley has looked kind of rough in the playoffs for stretches. But if you were ranking all the players on Cleveland versus all the players on Detroit, which I think a lot of people dumb basketball down to, but it is dumb. It's being dumbed down when you do that. When you do that, you kind of wind up with, Cleveland at worst has the second and the third and the fourth best players in the series. And I get it, but we've watched these teams for 80 games all season. We understand what makes the Pistons really good, and that just doesn't capture the efficacy of this team. And I don't think that it's really super respectful of how good like Jalen Duren and Ausar Thompson are right now. I get that, Mobley and Allen and Mitchell and Harden and all the guys on the Knicks, every good player on the Knicks has been good for a long time. They're in the eye of the sort of media and have been in the playoffs. But our guys can kind of go toe to toe for them. Yeah, maybe the narrative hasn't caught up with them in that sense yet. They're going to have to be good for maybe a whole nother season, or maybe just this playoff run to start being, seen that way. But right now, I think that the broader media just kind of sees this as Cade and some dogs. And it is Cade and some dogs, but they are more than dogs. Like, they're good at basketball too.
Yeah, I completely agree. Before we wrap up the segment, I do want to talk about some of the flaws you mentioned with Detroit. So I believe that we're on the same page that the half-court creation, the half-court offense in general, the lack of secondary ball handling, and the question mark about their shooting are the biggest flaws with this team. I do like the point, though, that you brought out that I mentioned this earlier on Twitter to Sam Quinn of CBS. Me and him were going back and forth. And bringing up those flaws with the Pistons is fair. Those are legitimate flaws, and it could be the reason why they end up losing in the second round. It could be the reason why they end up not going far. It 100% could be. But like you mentioned, I think it's incredibly unfair and disingenuous to mention those things for the Pistons without then mentioning how the Pistons' strengths are capable of exposing flaws on these other teams that other teams also have. Like the Pistons' strength, to dismiss the Pistons' strengths as if those don't matter, but only their flaws matter, but these teams' flaws don't matter, and those couldn't come up. I think that's the biggest problem here, too. Like the Pistons' defense, like you mentioned, I'll let you go. The Pistons' defense is going to suffocate whoever they play against, I assume. If a team ends up going off against the Pistons, then I was wrong. But the Pistons' defense is going to suffocate whoever they play against, and whoever they play might struggle to score against them. Then it becomes, okay, whose defense is better? Who's able to create easier shots? And the Pistons are able to live in transition. They're able to get out. Exactly. Early transition, get easy buckets for themselves. They dominate the glass. They get second chance points. I think the Pistons have a better way of playing around, struggling within a half-court offense than some of these other teams do. If their half-court offense is being smothered, what else do they have? I don't know if these teams have as good of a margins wins as the Detroit Pistons do. So that's why I think it's disingenuous even when people discuss the Pistons' flaws, because it's like, okay, well, what about their strengths? And then what about these other teams' flaws? Are the Pistons the only imperfect team? Like, what's up here? But I'll let you wrap it up.
No, I mean, I think that you're so right, and the flaws will bear themselves out in the playoffs, right? Like, I think, there are flaws probably about the Pistons that, maybe are in the back of our minds, but haven't been beaten into yet the way that they might be in the playoffs. There might be flaws, I shouldn't even say about the Pistons, but I bet that there are flaws about like Cade individually that some team is going to tap into, and he's going to have to figure out that. But I mean, you say, and it's like, but Donovan Mitchell's flaws, for example, and I think that everybody kind of treats him as like, not a deity or anything like that, but I think that everybody's like, well, this guy's playoff stamped, right? Like he's had huge series in the past. He's also been on like 3-1 seeds and never made a conference finals, but that doesn't matter. But he's been on good teams in the past and had good series and scored a lot of points. But it's like, yeah, he also tries to take over every game. He goes hero ball. It's great that Cleveland has 4 fantastic players. It's great that Strus is coming off their bench, and it looks like he's really good and going to probably provide a spark on offense and perhaps on defense as a point of attack guy, ball pressure guy. But if Donovan Mitchell puts that cape on, none of that really matters. Then Donovan Mitchell is trying to beat the Pistons 1-on-5. I don't think you're going to be able to score on the Pistons 1-on-5. I don't think that hero ball is going to be a problem, so to speak, for the Pistons. So, like you said, the defense, I don't know. Can this all be boiled down to, I think people think that offense is more important than defense in the playoffs, when that's probably just not true.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that.
Yeah,
I mentioned to Lindsay, I had mentioned to Lindsay Hunter on today's Piston Squad show. We were talking about it, but I know I want to move on to the play-in teams because we are running a little bit. But I mentioned to Lindsay that you look at OKC. Like OKC obviously has a historic score in SGA, and he's insane. But if you look at their half-court offense was at the top of the playoffs last year, and it dipped a little bit in the playoffs last year. And
offense was bad in the playoffs.
Yeah,
they were
but
the
their defense.
all the time.
Yeah, and their defense won them multiple games. Like they're the Warriors, but the inverse. Like in the third quarters, the Warriors would go up by 20 because they hit 5 threes. OKC would go up by 20 on you in 2 minutes because they forced 3 steals. All of a sudden, they've created 12 transition buckets. Now in 2 minutes, now you're down 20 points and the game's over. Like I do completely agree that it's just because people don't find defense as sexy, and they think defense really is just trying hard and not talent. Really,
that is definitely true. That does bug me, but like. I think it's even more than people don't think defense is sexy. I think that people just equate the teams that are good in the playoffs with their best player. It's like, yeah, the best player usually is really good at offense. So when you think of the Pacers last year and the run that they went on, or the Nuggets, or really whoever, the Lakers, LeBron's teams, whoever, Steph, all those teams generally have really good defenses or had really good defensive personnel that didn't play the whole season or something like that maybe, sunk their numbers down. Like they're equally important in basketball, period. If you stop the other team from scoring 2 points, that's 2 less points that you have to score. They work in tandem together, and if you get stopped, it makes offense easier. Like you said, I mean, we both said, to reiterate, like defense is important in the playoffs too, and the Pistons are not just trying hard; they are fantastic at defense. They have one of the 3 best defenders walking earth. They have a slew of guys that'll come off the bench and play defense. We're a good team. We have a good team. Period.
Right. I completely agree. Coming up, though, I want to discuss, is there any team in the play-in, Matt, that you think could cause the Detroit Pistons problems. We'll break it down coming up. Today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. If I could just find it over here. There you go. Financial stress is something a lot of people are carrying right now. It's not just about numbers. It can affect your sleep, your relationships, and your overall mental health in ways that build up over time. And the reality is struggling with money doesn't mean you failed. Sometimes it just means you haven't had the right kind of support. It's something I've thought about, how easy it is to put pressure on yourself financially without really talking about it. Therapy isn't just about financial advice. It's about working through that stress, the anxiety, and the emotions that come with it. With over 30,000 licensed therapists and more than 6 million people served, BetterHelp makes it easier to get matched and start focusing on what you need. When life feels overwhelming, therapy can help. Sign up and get 10% off at BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off again at BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA. Now I've got to tell you guys about another one of our sponsors, FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are right around the corner where every possession matters, every matchup is magnified, and every game can swing a series. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a great way to get in on the action. You can bet just $5 and you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. The app makes it easy to follow the action with player stats, trends, and matchups all in one place. And during the playoffs, that extra insight really matters when you're looking at stars, role players, and key moments. It just makes the entire playoff experience more engaging from start to finish. So head to FanDuel.com to get started today. And again, if your first $5 bet hits, you'll get $250 in bonus bets. Again, if your first $5 bet hits, head to FanDuel.com to get started today. FanDuel, play your game. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We're free and available on all your podcast platforms. My goodness. Hit that subscribe button to the YouTube channel. Leave us a 5-star review, whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. Make sure you guys are checking out the Locked On Pistons Squad show that we recorded today with Lindsay. This one was another great episode. I was dying of laughter. Also, Lindsay included a tidbit on why Ben Wallace left back in, I believe, what was it, 06, 07 for the Chicago Bulls and some of the things maybe that were going on behind the scenes. It was a very insightful talk with him. And there's all kinds of other stuff as well. I've really enjoyed recording with Lindsay. It's been a lot of fun. Make sure you guys check that out, and also check out the Everyday Club in the description down below for the Locked On Pistons Discord server. Or if you also want to catch Locked On Pistons or the Squad Show without ads, you can check it out down below in the description down below. Okay, Matt, coming up, we are going to be seeing the play-in tournament play out. For anyone who happens to not know and has been living under a rock, there is a play-in tournament now at the end of every year, and there's 4 teams that play in it. It goes to the 10th seed, and the teams that will be in it this year for the Eastern Conference, at least it looks like as of now, the Toronto Raptors are going to avoid the play-in, but technically they could.
Only like a game up, right?
Yes. Right now it looks like it's going to be Orlando at 7, 76ers at 8, Charlotte at 9, and Miami at 10. So those will be your 4 play-in teams. Matt, I've talked about this a little bit with Lindsay a few episodes ago on the Squad Show. We talked about some of the play-in teams, if anyone gives the Pistons any kind of concern or scare. What do you think? Is there any team in that play-in spot, in that territory, that you think could give the Pistons a little bit of a scare?
Man, I think you got to respect Charlotte, to be honest with you. Even though I think that a lot of people are worried about the matchup because, it looks like they have so much firepower than us, and I get that to a degree, but just from the perspective of they have 50 games of being as good as anybody in basketball at this point, man. They are just good. Since Moussa Diabate has been in the lineup, they are just good. They have 3 fantastic, I shouldn't say fantastic, they have 3 really good offensive players that fit together. They all get up a lot of threes. They have Diabate, Miles Bridges. I mean, he can create shots in a pinch when you need him to. He kind of fills that sort of Tobias Harris void to a degree with them, and also is obviously pretty effective in transition, the lob catcher, which perfect for LaMelo's style in particular. And Diabate, man, just a second on him, probably the best motor in the league, or he's to Michigan, so some of the people listen to this may be familiar. He is one of the best rebounders alive. He is in a very, very short list. When he's on the court, they do not give up defensive rebounds, and they kill you on the offensive glass, and it's all because of him. Well, it's because of him and because their floor is so spaced, I think, that there's just not a lot of helping that the wings can do. A lot of times your center is just kind of down there in the swamp with Diabate. Now, is Duren going to get killed on the glass? No, I can't imagine that happening. Are the Pistons going to get killed on the glass? I can't imagine that happening. But I do wonder if we can still, if we'll be able to generate the offensive rebounds that it feels like we've been relatively relying on all season. With Diabate down low, and if we'll be able to, generate offense at a clip if we can't rely on those offensive rebounds, can we generate offensive clip that can keep up with their three shooters? When Knipple, Miller, and LaMelo are on the court together, over half of their team shots are threes. Over half. That blows pretty much everybody out of the water. Certainly blows the Pistons out of the water. So, I mean, if they get hot, you just end up in a math battle. And this team has been playing effective basketball, point blank period all season. This is not something hollow. This is not they can get hot. Any team can get hot. Like they're good. LaMelo's a real engine, and he drives a lot for that team. Con is really, really good. Miller is really, really good. They're pretty deep. Kobe White is effective off the bench as a guard. I mean, they've got a good team. I think that our defense should be able to keep them in check. As much as it is, it's great to get a lot of threes up. They are pretty reliant on them. I don't know that they'll be able to create a lot of good threes against us, just because I'm not really sure how often they'll be able to touch the paint, quite frankly. So I respect them. I think that will be a good series, an interesting series. I think that there will be points in that series where we're a little scared. I think, I'll go that far, but and I think that they will push us to 6. But other than them, I mean, like I said, the Pistons are really good, man. I feel pretty confident. I think a couple of those teams, are interesting and have ceilings maybe that their record doesn't show. The Magic, when Suggs plays is pretty good. And Franz, obviously, when those two guys are on the floor, they're pretty good. So, I mean, it's a tough group of playing teams. The Sixers obviously have a lot of talent when they're healthy, but I don't know. The
Embiid just had surgery, by the way.
Oh yeah, true. Good point. Do we know he's just done?
I have no clue if that surgery is something that knocks him out for the year. I got no clue, but I have to assume it's going to keep him out for at least a little bit.
Yeah,
fair.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't even know I think Maxey is a problem in and of itself. I don't know. Embiid, as much as he is just like a machine, like a scoring machine at this point, it feels like he's auto points when you dump it down to him. Him being so incapable on the glass and on defense makes me I wouldn't be really worried about the Sixers in the series, even if you were. And Drummond is terrible, by the way, off the bench. Now, Bill Simmons the other day had him for some 6 man of the year thing. We're like years late on this, brother. He's one of the worst players in the league now. Unfortunately, I love Dre, but it is what it is.
So I agree with you against Charlotte. I mean, you mentioned it, over a near 50-game stretch. They have been just legit one of the best teams in the NBA over the last 47 games, which goes all the way back to the change of the year. They have the best net rating in basketball. They have the best offense in basketball. They have the 6th best defense in basketball. They have the best rebound percentage in basketball. They have the highest 3-point rate in basketball. They have the 2nd highest offensive rebound rate in basketball. They have the 5th highest true shooting as a team in basketball. And they have the 6th highest or 6th best record in basketball. So, I mean, look,
when you put it like that,
look,
I don't like it.
For 47 games, they have legit been a very good basketball team. And that's why I was hitting on with Lindsay, is that I don't think that Charlotte is, if you look at Charlotte since January 1st, they are not a 7th, 8th, or 6th seed. They are playing like a 5, 4, 3 seed in the East. That's
playing like the Celtics.
Yeah, they're playing incredible. So this is not your normal, 8th seed team, if that does end up being who the Pistons play. Now, the rest of the teams, I think the Pistons would handle pretty easily. I honestly, I think they could probably sweep the rest of the teams. That's where I'm at. I don't think I'm not too worried about Orlando. And Philly, you can't trust that they'll play 3 games in a row without someone breaking something or twisting an ankle or, tripping over their own team. Who knows?
Playoff P.
What do you say?
Playoff P. They have playoff P.
Yeah, I mean, I guess playoff P.
The Heat. I mean, they have a threat to score 83 every night.
Yeah, sure. Did you see what the Wizards did to him the last time? They just made it to where okay, we'll lose by 80, but you're not scoring.
I texted it to you. The Wizards, I mean, this is the worst it's ever been, I think, from a tanking perspective. I've been watching the league. I've been like a league pass diehard for 5 years. And watching the tanking, I watched the Tanking Thunder, all of it. The Wizards are a special breed of just horrible, bro. They are a stimulus check to any bad player that plays against them. Patrick Williams, I think, had his career high in everything the other night. Everything. And he's been in the rotation for 4 years now.
Yeah, no, they're really bad. But get back to the play-in. I think it's only Charlotte. Charlotte's the only team I think could give the Pistons a scare. I wanted to ask you this about, what was it?
Hopefully they could be the 7, right? And then we wouldn't have to.
And they'll have to get up to 8 though, because if they stay at 9,
they're like a half game back, right? Or tied.
Yeah, but their final, I think their final few games are tough. They got the Pistons tomorrow, and then they got the Pistons tomorrow, then New York in the final game of the year. I mean, depending on how New York wants to play it, maybe they want to get to. I think I heard Brian Windhorst talking about like New York and Cleveland could play like crazy games to try to force themselves into spots they want to actually be. So who knows? We'll have to see and who knows if Detroit actually even plays everybody. Who knows? So we'll have to see how it goes. But
crazy,
Charlotte,
we circled back around to the games that don't matter in the regular season.
Right. I wanted to ask you this about Charlotte. Charlotte, they are, since the change in the year, we talked about how great they've been on the glass. Do you think, you kind of answered it, but I think that's somewhere that wouldn't hold up against the Pistons. I think the Pistons' size would overbear them. And I think that they have, while they have been an incredible defense since the change in the new year, I think they have points in their defense or on the floor that the Pistons will be able to attack over a playoff series, over a 7-game series where you can strategize and kind of repeatedly attack the same thing over and over and, identify something. I think they have some of those push points that the Pistons would be able to identify. And I think the Pistons' size on the glass would nullify some of how maybe Charlotte has been on the glass since the change of the new year. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Like I said, I'm just not sure that it would be an advantage for either team, or either team would dominate one on the glass when both have kind of relied on that all year. I also think, I wonder if there's something to be said. So like theoretically or generally, 3-pointers generate more offensive rebounds. I wonder if there's something to be said for like, man, the Pistons get offensive rebound shooting twos. Like that's a little bit more rare. But no, I'm not worried that we would get killed on the glass at all. I don't think that that's really. I would have to see that to believe it, I'll say.
Well, in the Pistons' last matchup against the Hornets, now we all know what happened in that game, but in their last matchup against the Hornets, rebounding was basically dead even. It was 41-39 total. Pistons had 14 offensive rebounds. Charlotte had 11. Pistons had 27 defensive rebounds. Hornets had 28. It was a pretty even game. The Pistons won by 6, and we know that like everything that happened in that game, multiple people got tossed. We get it. The one thing about Charlotte, and you mentioned it, the one thing that I am probably most concerned about, and then we have to go where I just realized we're at 27 minutes. My goodness. The one thing about Charlotte is what you mentioned. They shoot so many threes. They shoot so many more threes than anyone else. Especially when LaMelo, like you mentioned, when LaMelo's on the floor with Khan, that it is kind of one of those things where I do think I don't want to say they're over-reliant because it's worked for them for 47 games. I think they're just a 3-point.
And they're all real shooters, like really real shooters. And they'll shoot from wherever, and they want to shoot from wherever.
Right. But I do think that the Hornets are the team. You want to talk about old heads talking about this. They are the team that go by the live or die by the 3. And if they what's it called? If they get hot and they hit 22 threes, you're probably just going to lose. If they hit 22 threes in a game, like you're probably just going to lose one of those games. And they have the capability of having one of those stretches and relying on this 3-point variance where it's like, okay, we're just going to shoot 63s maybe in a game, and we think we're going to hit enough that we'll just outscore you enough to win the game. That's something that I think Charlotte is the scariest to be able to do to make up for what I believe is a talent difference and the overall team difference in quality. So that's the part that I'm the most worried about with Charlotte. Nonetheless, I do think the Pistons will win. I do think they could push the Pistons to 6. I am going to pick the Pistons probably in 5, but I would not be shocked at all if they push them to 6. I don't think the Pistons would lose the series. I'm not too concerned about that at all. But I do think that I think whatever team gets Charlotte in the first, if they somehow were to get to the 7, I don't think any team wants to play them in the first round. Like that's just a series that you're just like, we don't want to have to play 6 hard games against the Charlotte Hornets, man. We just don't want to do it. So that's the only team. All the other teams I think would be, I think they could have beat these other teams without Cade being at full strength, or maybe even without him on the floor, to be honest. Coming up though, will Ron Holland be in the playoff rotation? Last episode, I did not have him in my playoff rotation, and a lot of you guys were hot. So I want to hear from Matt. Does he have Ron Holland in the playoff rotation? We'll talk about it coming up. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. The playoff push is heating up and tournament hoops are here, and there's no better way to get in on the high-flying action than with PrizePicks, America's #1 sports picks app. Every bucket, every assist, every big moment means more when you're building lineups on PrizePicks. PrizePicks makes it simple to play. It's daily fantasy built around player projections, so you can stay locked in to every game. You just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, what makes it quick and easy to jump in. You can mix different sports in the same lineup: basketball, baseball, hockey, and more. And features like early payouts, my favorite feature, because I'm scared. I like to get out of there. Let you lock in and win early if your player gets off to a strong start. It's a fun way to stay engaged, especially during the most important stretch of the season. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup with PrizePicks. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We're free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons, hit that subscribe button, or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. I do want to mention you guys that we are just around like 115 subscribers away from 13K. If you are listening or watching and you haven't hit that sub button, please do so. It's a great way to support, and we want to get to 13,000 before the playoffs end. All right, Matt, let's go ahead and wrap up the podcast with this. Last episode, I discussed what I thought would be the Pistons playoff rotation. I had said that I thought that they would go at most 10 deep. I couldn't imagine them going 11 or 12 deep. I honestly almost would rather them go 9 deep, but I could see them going 10 deep. Now, that does not mean that they won't play 11 guys throughout the series, but in a given game, they'll go as deep as 10 guys, I think. And the players I went with were Cade, Ausar, Duncan, Tobias, and Duren, the starters. Then I went with Stu, Danis, Harris, Herder, and Javonte. Those are the 10 I went with. I thought JB would go. Obviously, a lot of that is built into the fact that I think JB is going to play Caris LeVert no matter what. Now, again, I do want to shout this out. Caris has been playing somewhat well over the last 5 to 6 games. So give him credit. We have been hard on him all year. But the last 5 to 6 games, he has been looking fine. But because I think that even with the emergence of Danis, that JB is going to go to Caris no matter what. That's why I have that rotation that way. And I gave the edge to Javonte in the rotation because of his impact defensively off the ball, while also being one of the, I can't believe I'm saying this, one of the best corner three-point shooters in the entire NBA this year. It's been absolutely ridiculous. So that's why I went with Javonte over Ron in the playoff rotation. So now you take the chance. Let's see if you make everyone mad, if you side with them or what. Would you have Ron in the playoff rotation?
No, not well. I will say first, I wouldn't plan on going 10 deep. I would love to. Do you have off the top of your head? This is not a fair question. Like examples of teams that actually went 10 deep in the playoffs. That would be. I have. Did
OKC and Indiana didn't they do that last year? Especially Indiana went.
They go 10 deep. Indiana went really deep. By the end of it, though. No, you might be right. Did they might have been 10 deep for the first couple rounds. That's a good point.
I think they might have had like, I feel like I remember watching Indy when they might have had like 5 bench players on the floor at once in the playoffs, like not even a starter on the floor.
Yeah. They were deep kind of like we are, but they were also like, oh, can Tony Bradley please give us 6 minutes of rebounding? Like, and a guy like that just wouldn't play on our team. So I don't know. It kind of works both ways. When teams have major flaws, sometimes they have to dig deeper in their bench. But to the Ron Holland, I think Herder, Danis, and Stu are locked off the bench to be in the playoff rotation. Javonte, look, the 49% from the corner thing, I think, is you just got to put him out there. He's got to be the first guy that you believe in as a wing off the bench, I think, as like sort of the defensive wing off the bench. I love Ron. But that tips the scales in a way that I just don't think Ron can compete with. But I will say, oftentimes in the playoffs, you are just looking to steal some minutes, man. There's 3 minutes here. Cade picked up 3 fouls in the first half, and we just got to survive for these 4 minutes. Or Cade picked up 3 fouls in the first half, and we're down 11. We have to steal a few minutes here and actually win these minutes. And I think, because the playoffs can be so situational, and you run into so many issues, and you have to have answers for them. Ron Holland just has such a unique trait of being able to kind of carry a couple of minutes just through sheer like turnover creation on defense and getting out in transition, especially when you pair, obviously we talked about the Ausar Thompson, the 9 to 5 minutes all season long. Also with Paul Reed, when you pair him with another guy who can create those turnovers and does create a lot of turnovers, that way you're mitigating Ron Holland's negatives as a half-court offensive player even further. I think, it makes sense at times to try and get him out there. I would also say, if we're in a series against Boston, for example, and Jaylen Brown's cooking, but Ausar is guarding somebody, like are you going to trust Javonte Green, who is, I feel like, substantially smaller, or at least it feels like he's a bit smaller than Ron Holland to guard maybe some of those bigger wings, bigger creators when Ausar Thompson is incapable or when he's on the bench? I would ask that question because that's really important too. I mean, you run up against a lot of different players. I understand not thinking Ron Holland's going to be in the rotation. When you list out all those players, sans Harris, I feel like, I don't really have a great argument for Ron to play over them. But when a player is so effective, I mean, it's an entire side of the ball. Is Ron Holland a specialist? Kind of, but it's not like he just shoots threes or he just can drive or something like that. Like, it's an entire side of the ball that he is a specialist of, and he creates easy offensive opportunities through being such a dominant off-ball defender. So, I mean, I definitely wouldn't rule it out. I want to see Ron in the playoffs. I think that the experience will be good for him. Not that really matters more, on the way to the championship, but he is just such a fit with what we do. He is such an emboldener of our identity. He has so much dog. I know that the moment won't be too big for him. So I think that we'll see him in the game. Will JB expect to use him at the start of every game? I certainly don't think so. So not in the rotation, I guess is what that means.
Yeah. So obviously I agree with that because I don't have Ron in the playoff rotation as of right now. Obviously, the thing is with Ron is, look, I want to make sure this is very clear. I am very high on Ron. This is nowhere near saying that I don't like Ron, that I'm not high on his future. That is absolutely not the case. But it's simply about the five guys we know that are going to play in the starting lineup. I agree with your locks. I think the locks that we know no matter what are going to be on this floor are Stu, Herter, and Danis. I can't imagine that they don't play Herter. I cannot. There's no. I think he could end up being the highest.
You have to. It would be that would be a terrible decision.
If
an objectively terrible decision.
It would. Yeah, it would be. I don't want to say what I think. It would be insane. It would be crazy. So I like Herter, Stu, and Danis. I think have to play. What do you say?
The F word.
I mean, I almost did. but Herter, Stu, and Danis, I think, are going to play no matter what. Because of how JB has talked about Harris and the belief in Harris, I think you basically have to put him as a lock, not because of his play, but because JB's just in love with him and is going to play him. So
can I say I feel like you have to pick between Harris and Danis?
I do. No, I agree with you. I would go Danis, but I don't feel. Honestly, I think that might end up being the case in JB picks Harris. I think that's more likely than him picking between them and picking Danis. Out of all the likely options, I think it's Danis and Harris both play. Then the next likely option, Harris plays, Danis doesn't. and then all the way at the very bottom is Danis plays, Harris doesn't. I think that's the three possibilities. But because of that, you just have one option left open. And while I completely agree that, and there could be games where they do choose to go with Ron because they need that, just his ability to just create havoc, and out of nowhere within 2 minutes he scored 6 to 8 buckets just off of being the Tasmanian devil and just losing his mind, and all of a sudden the ball finds him and he's just like, it's I could understand why they would go to him, and I'm not saying it would be a wrong thing too. I think that definitely could happen. But if you're just penciling in a rotation going in, like, okay, this is what we're going to start with, I think it comes down to two things between Javonte and Ron. Obviously, the shooting. The fact that Javonte is that good of a three-point shooter in the corners, I think is incredibly valuable for this team, especially with how teams guard.
Yeah.
If they guard the Pistons, how they guard them last year in the playoffs, like the Knicks trapping Cade as much as they were with Ausar cutting down the baseline, having Duncan and Herter and Javonte be these guys in the corners ready to catch these short roll kickouts, whatever, that is going to be incredibly valuable, like insanely valuable. So that's the number one reason why I go with Javonte over Ron. The second thing is this. I trust Javonte to not turn the ball over as much as Ron, because I don't think Javonte is going to try to do anything outside of catch and shoot, cut, and then that if it's not there, he's just going to get off the ball and he'll go stand in the corner, whatever.
On offense, he doesn't do too much, but he doesn't do too much.
Exactly. And you can honestly, those type of players you like to have in the playoffs if you're talking about like your end of rotation guys. And I'm not saying Ron is just a walking turnover, but Ron is not. I think he still has. Again, I'm very high on Ron, but I think in a playoff situation, Ron still is a little bit behind in the quick decision making off the ball, the quick decision making with the ball in his hands, maybe not trying certain things. There's sometimes, and again, we love his aggressiveness as a driver. He's a great finisher, great touch, but sometimes he does try to, basically every possession matters in the playoffs. And those little plays that we kind of just like blow off, we don't really care about in the regular season, where every now and then he does a drive and it's like, oh, that wasn't really there, but that's Ron. We take it. Oh, if he does that, a play like that in the playoff is like, okay, that just like that could kill you. Like that's
It'll bench him. It'll bench him.
Yeah,
if he does.
No, for sure. I think if he would have one of those possessions where, because his handle also isn't the tightest. I know it feels like I'm ripping Ron. I'm really not trying. Like, I love Ron. I think he's going to be incredibly important to the future. But like as of right, if we're talking about just right now, I agree with you. I think those are the type of things that Javonte won't do, and I think those are the type of things that if Ron did do them just one possession, JB would like yank him instantly. Like those are the kind of things that JB just wouldn't stand for in a playoff series. So that's why I'm going with Javonte over Ron. That doesn't mean I don't think Ron's never going to play. Doesn't mean I think that Ron won't be good for certain situations like you painted out. But I think that Javonte probably has his trust a little bit more, JB that is, right now, and what he brings as a corner three-point. Well, also, he's not nearly as good of a point of attack defender as Ron. He's not as good on ball. Off the ball, though, he's crazy. Javonte off the ball, he's just a
great lane. Great in the lanes.
Yeah, he's incredible off the ball. So he also brings some of that defensive disruption. I'm sure we'll see both of these guys a lot in the playoffs as long as the Pistons go deep. But I think initially you'll see Javonte. All right, we'll wrap it up there. Thank you, Matt, for coming on the podcast, man. You guys can follow him over on Twitter at Griff1on1. I appreciate all of you guys making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. Free and available on all your podcast platforms. Hit that subscribe button to the YouTube channel. Leave us a 5-star review, whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on. And until next time, I will see you guys later. Stay safe out there, and peace out, everybody.